Remember when Titanic was sold as the greatest love story ever told? Ice, violins, and that famous kiss on the bow? Yeah, that's what they wanted you to see. What they didn't tell you is that half the crew landed in the hospital after a poisoned dinner, Kate Winslet nearly drowned in freezing water, and Leonardo DiCaprio watched her stripped naked the first week of filming. Meanwhile, studio executives clawed back profits and forced the actors into contracts they couldn't escape. Stick around. These 15 weird facts prove Titanic wasn't just a movie. It was a $200 million survival test. Fact 1. The poisoned chowder incident that nearly sank the set. You think the Titanic sank once? Wrong. It almost went down again. Behind the scenes. One cold night in Nova Scotia, the cast and crew sat down for a comforting dinner of clam chowder. Within an hour, chaos exploded. People started collapsing. Others were laughing uncontrollably, hallucinating, or running around screaming. Even James Cameron, yes, the director, was jabbed with a syringe trying to calm people down. It wasn't food poisoning. It was sabotage. Lab tests found the chowder had been laced with PCP, a powerful hallucinogen known as angel dust. Over 50 people were rushed to the hospital, some violently shaking, others crying, some just giggling like maniacs. Cameron later said he thought he was dying. To stop himself from passing out, he stabbed his own arm with a pen just to stay conscious. Police investigated, but no one was ever caught. The catering company swore innocence. Was it revenge? A sick prank? Nobody knows. The mystery remains unsolved to this day. Fact 2. James Cameron's dark obsession beneath the ocean. Here's the truth nobody told you. Titanic wasn't born out of romance. It was born out of obsession. James Cameron didn't pitch the movie as a love story. He pitched it as a reason to dive into the wreck itself. His real dream wasn't Jack and Rose. It was descending into the darkness 2.5 miles down. He convinced Fox to fund it by promising a blockbuster. But behind closed doors, he just wanted to explore the Titanic's grave. And he did. 12 dives, each lasting hours, in freezing, claustrophobic submersibles. He filmed real footage of rusting chandeliers, decaying cabins, and the ship's haunting bow. It was the actual Titanic. Remember those opening shots you thought were CGI? They were Cameron's own footage, captured in total darkness, lit only by robotic lights. Crew members said he was obsessed, almost possessed when he talked to the wreck like it was alive. When the studio realized he'd turned their $200 million romance into a deep-sea expedition, it was too late. But that obsession made the film immortal. He didn't just direct Titanic. He literally found it. Fact 3. Kate Winslet's near-death on set and the frozen water torture. Kate Winslet nearly froze to death making Titanic. Literally. Cameron refused to fake the cold. He ordered the massive water tanks chilled until breath fogged in the air. For hours, Kate had to swim through debris and cling to floating props while cameras rolled. Her lips turned blue. Her skin went numb. At one point, her long coat got snagged underwater. She couldn't move. Crew members had to dive in and pull her out before she drowned. Doctors later confirmed she had mild hypothermia. But Cameron? He just told her to warm up and get back in. The crew called him MIJ, maniacal genius. Extras fainted, stunt performers bruised, even Leo complained about the ice-cold water. But Kate never walked away. She was 21, terrified, and determined not to ruin the shot. There were times, she admitted later, I thought I was actually going to die. That's why her shivering in those lifeboat scenes feels so real. It was real. No CGI, no acting, just a young Kate. Fact 4. The secret hand that drew Rose naked. And it wasn't Leo's. Okay, brace for this one. When Rose asks Jack to draw me like one of your French girls, the hand sketching her, not Leonardo DiCaprio's. It's James Cameron's. Yep. The director himself drew that now famous nude portrait. He's left-handed, so if you re-watch the scene, you can actually see the shot flipped in post-production to make it look like Leo's right hand. Cameron didn't just direct the art, he was the artist. Before Hollywood, he was a struggling illustrator, doodling machines, aliens, and portraits in the back of a truck during his pre-fame days. For Titanic, he didn't want some random art student making sloppy lines. He wanted emotion, intimacy, something that felt like Jack's heartbeat translated onto paper. That's why the drawing scene hits differently. It's not just sensual, it's sincere. It's a moment of human connection filtered through Cameron's own hand. Later, the actual drawing sold for tens of thousands at auction. Fact 5. The door debate that refuses to die. Let's settle it. Could Jack have survived? That question has haunted fans for 25 years. After Titanic hit theaters, people weren't just crying, they were arguing. The floating door, that cursed plank, became the most analyzed piece of furniture in film history. Diagrams, fan theories, college essays, even Mythbusters built replicas. They proved, with perfect balance and a life jacket as a float, Jack and Rose could have both survived. Cue outrage. So, Jack died for nothing? James Cameron wasn't amused. In 2022, for the film's 25th anniversary, he actually hired hypothermia experts to retest it. And the verdict? Yes, both could fit physically. But they wouldn't last. Jack's body temperature would have crashed within minutes. It's called Titanic, not Jack Lives, Cameron snapped. It's insane, right? The man spent millions settling a debate about a door. But that's the magic of the movie. That door isn't just wood. It's the line between love and loss. Fact 6. The tragic real couple who died together as the ship sank. If you thought Jack and Rose were tragic, wait till you hear about Isidore and Ida Strauss. They were real, co-owners of Macy's in New York. Wealthy, powerful, beloved. But when the Titanic hit the iceberg, they proved love can be stronger than survival. As lifeboats filled, Ida was offered a seat. Her husband wasn't. She looked at him and said the words that still make historians tear up. "We have lived together for many years. Where you go, I go." She handed her maid her fur coat and stayed beside her husband as chaos erupted. Witnesses saw them standing calmly on deck, arm in arm, as the ship slipped beneath the waves. Cameron honored them in silence, that old couple holding each other in bed while water floods their cabin. Only Isidore's body was ever found. Ida vanished into the Atlantic. But that one image carried more power than 1,000 special effects. It wasn't Hollywood. It was history. And maybe that's why Titanic still hits you right in the gut every single time. Fact 7. The real grave that became Jack Dawson's shrine. Here's where fiction bled into reality. After Titanic blew up worldwide, fans flooded Halifax, Canada, where victims of the real shipwreck are buried. And there it was, a headstone reading J. Dawson. People lost it. Teenagers left roses, lipstick kisses, even love letters, convinced they'd found Leonardo DiCaprio's grave. Except that J stood for Joseph Dawson, a 23-year-old Irish coal trimmer who shoveled coal in the Titanic's boiler room. He had nothing to do with Cameron's story, but try telling that to fans. The grave became a shrine. Tour guides started calling it Jack's resting place. Some even charged for visits. Journalists called it the world's strangest case of mistaken identity. Ironically, Cameron had no idea that name was real when he wrote the script. It was pure coincidence. Joseph Dawson never knew fame, but Hollywood gave him immortality. In the end, he became what Jack always wanted to be: remembered. Fact 8. The lost ending Cameron shot, and then buried forever. You think you've seen the ending of Titanic? You haven't. There's a version James Cameron shot, and then buried so deep it almost became myth. In the scrapped ending, Brock Lovett and his crew catch old Rose sneaking to the ship's rail. Instead of quietly dropping the heart of the ocean, she gives this long moral lecture about life and loss while the crew pleads with her not to throw it. Then she dramatically tosses it into the sea. And everyone gasps. Sounds emotional, right? Wrong. Test audiences hated it. They laughed. What was meant to be profound turned awkward because a woman preaching while holding a multi-million-dollar diamond overboard. Cameron watched the playback in silence, then muttered, "Cut it. It's too loud." He reshot it into the hushed, wordless version we know today. Rose alone, the ocean breathing beneath her, the jewel vanishing into darkness. No speeches, no audience. Just one woman's private goodbye. That single edit changed everything. Fact 9. The Titanic that cost more than the real ship. Now here's irony for you. Cameron's Titanic cost more to make than the real Titanic cost to build. The original ship, launched in 1912, cost about $7.5 million, around $180 million today. How about Cameron's movie? A jaw-dropping $200 million budget. He rebuilt nearly the entire vessel in Mexico. 90% scale, fully functional hydraulic decks, hundreds of extras, and interior rooms so accurate they used original blueprints. Every chandelier, carpet pattern, and china plate was historically correct. He even demanded that silverware in background shots bear the real White Star Line logo, just in case the camera might catch it. Studios panicked as the budget doubled. Executives wanted to shut it down. Cameron famously told them, "You can fire me, but you'll still have to finish it without me." They backed off. It was a gamble that nearly destroyed careers. And yet, it became the first film to cross $1 billion, then $2 billion in re-releases. So yeah, Titanic sank once. But its movie floated straight to the top of cinematic history. Fact 10. The scene so controversial. Cameron had to apologize publicly. Here's something wild most fans never heard. James Cameron once had to apologize, not to a studio, but to a country. Early cuts of Titanic included a shocking scene where First Officer William Murdoch shoots a passenger during the panic, then turns the gun on himself. It was meant to show the chaos and despair as the ship went down. But when word got out, Scotland went ballistic. See, Murdoch was a real man, a respected Scottish officer. His family was devastated. They said Cameron had turned a hero into a murderer for the sake of drama. Newspapers tore into the production. The outcry was so fierce that Cameron publicly apologized and even donated money to a Murdoch memorial in Dalbeattie, Scotland. He swore it was artistic license, but insiders said Fox panicked. They knew they'd crossed a line, rewriting history too far. The scene was cut, but the damage was done. Cameron's perfectionism had collided with morality. Fact 11. How one line, "I'm the king of the world," changed cinema forever. When Leo climbed up on that rail with his arms out, Cameron wasn't getting the spark he wanted. The scene felt flat because it was just another wide shot of a guy yelling into the wind. So he told Leo, "Say something. Anything. Just feel it." Leo thought for a second, threw his arms wide, and shouted, "I'm the king of the world!" Everyone froze, then erupted. The crew cheered. Cameron yelled, "That's it!" And in that instant, one improvised line became movie history. Funny, right? Leo didn't think much of it. He actually cringed later, saying it sounded too cheesy. But when the movie won Best Picture, Cameron stood on that Oscar stage, lifted his arms, and yelled the same line, pure cinematic poetry. Fact 12. The unsinkable Molly Brown. Everyone remembers Kathy Bates as the loud, lovable, unsinkable Molly Brown. But the real woman? She was a force of nature. Margaret Brown wasn't just comic relief. When the Titanic sank, she didn't hide or cry. She took over. She helped load lifeboats, gave her own seat to others, and had to be physically forced into one by crewmen. Once adrift, she demanded the sailors turn back for survivors. When they refused, she threatened to throw one overboard. That's the kind of woman she was. And when the Carpathia rescued them, she immediately started collecting blankets, food, and money for immigrants who had lost everything. She organized aid committees before the ship even docked. But history almost erased her. She wasn't allowed to testify at the Titanic hearings because she was a woman. Newspapers later softened her story, turning her into a quirky legend instead of the rebel she was. Fact 13. James Cameron's obsession never ended. Most filmmakers move on after a hit. But James Cameron? He went back to the bottom of the Atlantic. In 2003, he teamed up with Bill Paxton and a group of scientists to film Ghosts of the Abyss. They built tiny robotic submarines with cameras to explore sections of the Titanic nobody had seen since 1912, dining halls, cabins, stairwells swallowed by darkness. Halfway through filming, the world above changed forever. News of the 9/11 attacks reached them while they were still at sea. Paxton later said, "We were documenting one tragedy while another unfolded." It shook Cameron to his core. He realized he wasn't chasing spectacle anymore. He was chasing ghosts. He'd spent hundreds of millions building a fake ship, then risked his life to study the real one. Ghosts of the Abyss wasn't just a documentary. It was a confession. Cameron couldn't let the Titanic go. Maybe he never will. He once said, "When you look at the wreck, it looks back." That's a man haunted by the story he brought to life. Fact 14. Leo's wild behavior behind the camera. If you thought Leo was the calm, romantic hero we saw on screen, think again. Behind the camera, he was 22, unpredictable, and impossible to control. James Cameron used to call him the cat. One moment sulking about cold water, the next flipping upside down underwater, laughing like a maniac. He'd pull pranks constantly, farting into his coat, then fanning it dramatically in Kate Winslet's face. She'd burst out laughing instead of storming off. He sketched crude cartoons between takes, left silly notes in props, and turned the set into his playground. But beneath all that mischief, there was loyalty. Kate later said they spent hours in his trailer whispering about love, heartbreak, and sex. "He gave me advice that actually worked," she laughed years later. Their friendship became a lifeline in Cameron's brutal environment. Fact 15. The secret that made Titanic a $2 billion miracle. Here's the wildest truth of all. Titanic should have failed. Every prediction said so. The budget was spiraling, the production was cursed, and the press called it Cameron's folly. Even the studio tried to cut the runtime. Cameron refused. "You want me to cut the heart out of it?" he snapped. "Over my dead body." Executives panicked. They thought it'd be a disaster, a $200 million romance on a sinking ship. Who'd care? But Cameron was betting on something bigger than spectacle, emotion. And he was right. The film didn't just make money, it reshaped cinema. It made people cry in packed theaters week after week for nearly a year. It made Leo and Kate icons, turned Celine Dion's voice into an anthem, and reminded the world that tragedy could still be beautiful. Cameron didn't just film a ship sinking. He filmed the moment cinema rose again. The most expensive movie in history became the one that refused to sink. So, after hearing all that, do you still see Titanic as a love story, or as Hollywood's most beautiful nightmare? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you survived the iceberg, and subscribe for more untold stories that'll sink your expectations.